Hey everybody, it's Shelby from Staying Books. Why the wardrobe today? It is Sunday and I am a diehard Seahawks fan, so as soon as I finish this video, I'm actually running out the door to go watch my Hawks play with a bunch of other people from Washington and love my Seahawks. It's kind of my stress relief Sunday fun day, and I will never miss the Hawks play ever because they are fantastic and don't argue. Every other team out there, no. Seahawks all the way. I may be new to BookTube, but even I have seen some of the commentary going on around about a video that came out this last couple weeks, basically saying that we didn't need a lot of diversity in books. And as this is kind of something that I'm really passionate about, I decided I really needed to do a DiverseAthon video and join in. If you don't know, DiverseAthon is a readathon that's going to be going on starting Monday, September 12th, and going through Monday, September 19th. And this is basically just a chance for you to try and read a bunch of different diverse books, whatever diverse means to you. There's no rules, there's no challenges or anything. It's just the goal to read more diversely. And it is being sponsored by 4 amazing women that got together and came up with this idea, and I'm so thankful for them to putting something like this together. I'm going to link their YouTube, BookTube profiles down below. So please take a look at them if you want to hear their whole pitch of why they put this together and what they were thinking at the time. But as this is something that I'm super passionate about, I decided I really needed to participate. Yeah, why would I be super passionate about something like this when clearly I am like the biggest majority out there, other than being female? I am white, straight, everything like cookie cutter, white bread America. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. I'm such a small town girl. So why would Miss White Bread America be so positive and feel that diversity is such an issue? And I think it really comes down to the fact that while I read a lot of diverse books, and that's always been something I've done, I just truly believe that everyone should be able to open up the pages of a book and find somebody like them. And it shouldn't always be about reading about one particular type of person, because the only way to change society and to change people's opinions is through education and reading. And so much of this world strives so hard to hang on to their hate and to hang on to the negativism and these backwoods ideas of who people should be or what they should be based on their sexuality or the color of their skin. And I just think that's awful and terrible, and really, it doesn't do justice to who we are as human beings. And the only way that we change those ideas is by opening up people's minds and giving them a broader perspective through education and through reading, and showing them that other people's opinions and points of view are valid as theirs, and that really they should spend more time getting to know others and trying to see things from their point of view, because maybe they'll find out there's a broader and greater idea out there that will make their lives that much more enriched. I have been reading romance, which is on its own a complete subgenre of diversity, for years. It's a subject that I very much enjoy, in part because I feel like there's a lot more truth and a lot more heart in a lot of the stories. And a lot of people don't see them because they're not used to looking for that in their reading material. They're put off by the idea of a romance between 2 guys or 2 girls. I am a huge supporter of LGBTQ rights and active in the community, and it's something that I feel very passionate about. So I thought, as part of this video, because people, when they think of diversity and reading, they talk about reading a lot of stuff that's different cultures or different race than them, but I haven't seen a lot of people talking about reading much in the way of LGBTQ materials. So what I'm going to do is do a quick 5 books that a lot of us would recommend as great, like, intro books into reading romance, and not all of them are necessarily heavy on the sex so much as they are just really great intro books. The characters are fantastic, the stories are wonderful. I'm actually going to also link a couple of Goodreads lists down below that are put together specifically to encourage people to read more romance. Both of these lists are people's suggestions of books that they think would be great first books or books to get you started in the genre. I'm going to start off with kind of a broad base that I think are great and come from different parts of the genre. So the first one is Cut and Run. It's the Cut and Run series, actually, by Abigail Rue and Madeline Urbane. and urban. But this series is fantastic. It has a huge devoted fan base that is just nuts over this series, and it has two of the most fantastic main characters ever. They are the romance to end all romances, and the series just gets better and better with every book. It's an action-packed series. They are both FBI agents, so there's a lot of great action as well as this most romantic romance ever, and these two guys are so suited together, and Ty and Zane are, they're Ty and Zane. Ty and Zane. I mean, talk about like epic romances, duos. If you ask any romance reader, they're going to put Ty and Zane up there with any other couple you could come up with that people are die about. I mean, it's ridiculous. The whole series is fantastic, and it's a really great introduction to reading as it's not, there's a lot of other things going on. It's not just about their relationship. The next one I want to talk about is Keeping Promise Rock by Amy Lane. This is a contemporary novel, and it is absolutely going to break your heart. I sobbed through this book. It is going to rip your heart out, but in the best possible way. There is just so much heart and love between Carrick and Deacon, and a lot of misunderstanding goes into their initial reactions and what happens that kickstarts the book and drives them apart. They grew up together, but circumstances and misunderstanding lead them to different areas, and it puts both of them into a downward spiral that the whole book is about them recovering and being who they truly are meant to be together. They have a great group of friends in this that are super supportive and become such fascinating characters in themselves. It's so well written. Amy Lane is a brilliant writer. She writes with a lot of depth and emotion. Definitely check this book out. So the next two books I'm going to recommend, I couldn't pick one over the other in my fantasy pick for my list, so I'm giving you both of them. Both are excellent versions of a fantasy novel. C.S. Picot's Captive Prince is much darker. It's the story of two countries at war, Achelos and Vir, and Damon is the warrior hero of his people. He has been on the front lines battling against Vir. He has won countless battles for his people. And his half-brother decides that he's going to overthrow Damon, and in doing so, causes Damon to be shipped to Vir as a pleasure slave. He is given to the Prince of Vir, Prince Laurent, and let's just say he doesn't know who Damon is, but he has no love for anyone from Achelos. There's a lot of negativism that goes on between these two men, where Damon has always been very forthright. Laurent has learned to sneak in the shadows and work from behind. And together, it's a beautiful story of two nations struggling to find themselves and their identity when bad elements have tried to take over, and two men finding the unexpected in someone else. Now, these elements in this are very dark. There's a lot of abuse. It is not an easy read at times, but as the story progresses over the course of the trilogy, it is amazing and heart-wrenching and just incredibly well written. On the other hand, Luck in the Shadows by Lynn Fleming is much more of a typical epic fantasy story. Sergil and Alec are fantastic characters. They meet by chance in prison, of all things, and help each other escape. Well, Sergil is actually a Night Runner, which is a secret organization that works for the government of the land and is based out of Rimini, and they watch from the backgrounds and pass word along of things that are going on. And Alec is a young man who has survived on his father was killed and gets kind of tossed into things with gets tossed into things with Sergil. And together they run around and end up saving the land in Rimini. There is not a lot of romance through it, but it's all kind of off-page. And this first book, there's little to none in it. It's the differences of Fae and humans and different lands and power struggles, and it's a lot of political intrigue, especially in the first book. Really great series, wonderfully well written, deep writing, very much in the epic fantasy genre style of writing with great adventure. The next series I'm going to recommend is by Andrea Speed, and it's the Infected series. The first book in the series is Prey. This is one of the most interesting takes on shifters that I've ever read. In this book, it's all cat shifters, and the different styles of big cats appear as different types of shifters, but it's not a peaceful, pleasant process. This is not a good thing. It's actually a virus that has infected humans and will ultimately kill each of its humans that it's infected and made into these shape changers. The virus is very aggressive and very painful. There's a lot of cultural things that go on with this disease, and how it manipulates the human body and what it means to be infected. And the story follows Roan McKinnon, who is a PI. And he takes on cases around the city, but he's used to be a cop, and he got drummed out of being a cop really because he was infected. But he is the only human born who has managed to live to adulthood who was born with the virus. Most virus children just die young because their body can't handle the amount of virus load in their system. Roan has managed to live to adulthood and actually controls his lion better than anyone has ever seen. He is an oddity. He gets brought in to stop these cats all the time. He has his PI business, and he is marrying to the love of his life, or living with the love of his life, Paris, who's a tiger shifter. And the tiger strain is the most deadly strain of the disease out there. Paris, though he is a tiger shifter, loves Roan, but he knows that his life will ultimately be coming to an end. His body can only hold out against the strain for so long. So in each book of the series, you have the PI cases that are going on, but you also have this relationship between Paris and Roan that's really lovely. The mysteries are usually pretty interesting. None of them are super complicated, but they're fun, and there are some great side characters in the series. It's a really interesting take on shifters. I really enjoyed that about it. So the next book I want to recommend is Dance With Me by Heidi Cullinan. It is absolutely beautiful, and Heidi writes with such depth of emotion. All of her characters are really beautifully fleshed out and very full, fantastic, amazing characters. This deals with the world of athletics, so again, a slightly different genre of MM. The two main characters in this, Ed Maurer, used to be a football player until a neck injury sidelined him, and Lori was a professional ballet dancer. Both are now volunteering at a local community center where they meet. Well, due to circumstances in this story, they end up dancing together. And it is this beautiful story of two men. It's a brilliant combination of fantastic characters, lovely story, beautifully written, just all comes together to just melt your heart, and I love this book. It stayed with me forever. It's one of the earlier books I read in MM romance. I read it years ago, and I can't tell you how many times I remember this book and go, oh my god, so beautiful. The last book I want to recommend, I debated about recommending because it's not actually a published novel. It is actually fan fiction. It's called The Student Prince by Faye J. And this book is one of the best, most interesting retellings of the Arthur and Merlin story that I've ever read. It, I believe, is based off of the BBC Merlin series. I've never seen the series, so I don't know how tied into that world it really is. But the book itself is fantastic. It's set in a modern day Britain, and Arthur and Merlin go to school together, and Merlin is training in secret as a magician and supposed to be keeping Arthur out of trouble. And the relationship that develops between them is just so fantastic. The world was creative and interesting, and the other characters are great. It's funny. There's so many interesting, unique things going on in this story. I was caught from page 1 in this book. It's a great YA NA style of writing. It's a wonderful fantasy. set in a modern world. It's really urban fantasy, and it's two men finding each other in college. So good. I really wish this was a published novel, but it is a free download, so I will link the download site as well in my comments below. So, what am I reading this week for the DiverseAthon? I've given you a bunch of books that I would recommend checking out. There are so many more. If you ever want recommendations, I have hundreds. I could talk about it for days because there's just so many undiscovered, brilliant books in that world. So, this week I'm going to be reading a book in a series I've already previously mentioned. I'm reading the next book in the Lynn Flewelling's Night Runner series, Coffin of Souls. This book is one I've been really wanting to get to. I just read The White Road last month. This series, for some reason, has taken me a really long time to get through it. It just never seems to come up in timing-wise for me to read it. And I only have 2 books left, and I really want to read them because this series is so fantastic. But this series is not only just an diverse, there's a lot of interplay between the species in it, with Sarah Gill being Fae and Alec being a half-breed. And they live in the human world in Rimini and are part of the political intrigue in the court there. There's a lot of different elements in play of classism as well as speciesism, I guess, for lack of a better term. Their sexuality is actually not a big deal in this book. It's actually their issues they run into have more to do with who they are because of their race and social class in different situations, though they've hidden that in some ways, but not giving any details of that away. Then it is about their sexuality. Their sexuality is really not a big deal. But I'm going to continue that series and definitely want to check that book out. I'm also going to be reading Firecracker by Charles R. Verhey. And this is a book that was recommended to me a long time ago. I've had it on, I've owned it for a while. I've just never gotten around to reading it. From the description, it seems like the characters are probably dealing with a lot of diversity issues. It is a magic situation. The main character is a magic user who's afraid of her own power, and she's been shunned because of that power, because she could pretty much destroy anything. And this is her chance to try and fit in with the rest of the world. And so there's a lot of issues it sounds like she's dealing with about being able to fit in and being different, and because of who you are. So I've been really looking forward to reading this book, and I should really get around to it. So I thought this would be a great time to take it on. One of the other recommendations I had this month was for a book called Femme by Marshall Thornton. And this book I got recommended for one of my challenges where somebody picks a book for me. So I don't really have a choice. I have to read this book this month. But it definitely has some of the diversity issues in it. The description alone characterizes the 2 characters. One is Queenie and the other as a straight-acting softball player named Dog. So you already know you're going to be getting elements of the wider gay world that deal with the diversity within the world itself and how people perceive that world. So I'm really curious to read this book. It's a humorous book. It's supposed to be really funny. It's going to be a fun one. I have to read this month. This felt like a good week to take it on. So also this week I'm going to do a combination of a reread with an arc that I received. I love this series. It's a fantastic fantasy series, but each book in the series has been individual up until this point. So since the new book that's coming out that I have the arc for is a continuation of the story of one of the earlier books, I wanted to reread that earlier book so that I could be fully prepared going in to read the arc. And the series is Dance with the Devil by Megan Durr. The first book that I'm going to reread is Sword of the King. It's actually book 5 in the series. And this world is super fantastical with every type of fantasy, paranormal style creature you could ever think of. And this one dealt with dragons. There's a whole hierarchy and classism built into this world. It has a very like Chinese triad style feel of the way the pits are run and the hierarchy of this battle system. The triad groups basically own these dragons and their trainers' lives, and their only way out is to fight yourself out of the pit. And there's a lot of things that go on between the relationships between dragons and their trainers and what it's supposed to be and what it's been twisted into. Loved the first book. It was one of my favorite books in the series. And then I got the arc of the next book in the series, Shield of the Dragon, to read, and it comes out in September. So I really want to read this, get it reviewed, and have it out there. I'm so curious to see where the continuation of this goes. Because when they ended it in the last book, I was so disappointed we weren't going to see more of these characters, and I can't believe that Megan Durr wrote another book. And it's just, I can't wait. I'm so excited to have gotten approved for this arc. I'm reading it off of NetGalley, and it's just going to be amazing. I'm also going to be reading a book by Susan Cain called Quiet, the Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. This book was recommended to me by an associate in the film world that I'm working with on a project called Bring Hollywood Home. She's the founder of Bring Hollywood Home, and my company's been brought in to kind of help them develop some things with it. And I was talking to her one day about being an introvert and not being comfortable and having to learn how to deal in film and be more outspoken and outgoing. And she recommended this book to me, and it's a nonfiction on the differences between introverts and extroverts and how American society has shaped the perception of both of those two personality types. So I'm really excited to read this. I have it on audiobook, so I'm going to be listening to it. I can't wait to see where it goes because it just sounded super fascinating. One of the other things I want to read this week is not actually a book, and it's not going to be on Goodreads. I have the script for it. It's actually an adaptation of a play. The play was called The Face of Emmett Till. The story is about Emmett Till, and it really is the spark of the civil rights movement in the United States. Emmett was a 14-year-old boy who went from Chicago down to Missouri to visit some of his family in the 1950s, and while down there was out one day with his friends and whistled at a white woman. Her husband and some of his friends ended up kidnapping Emmett, taking him out into the woods and beating him to death in a really gory, brutal fashion. Emmett's mother, Mamie Till, came down from Chicago and refused to let it be a closed casket ceremony. She had the casket open for everyone to see what these men had done to her 14-year-old boy. The men were, of course, acquitted. This story led to situations like Rosa Parks refusing to get up on the bus. It was this incited huge anger across the country for the way this boy was treated. Medgar Evers, it sparked his interest in civil rights and fighting for that. It's a huge turning point in our country's history, and I just feel like it's a good time for me to reread that screenplay. I have a couple other books that I would like to get to this week if I have time. A Gentleman's Position by K.J. Charles. I've already talked about a couple books in that series. It deals a lot with classism in the 1800s in London. I'd like to read Bone Cross by Patricia Briggs. It's another Mercy Thompson novel, and there's some Native American elements in that series, even though it's a paranormal. If I have time, I'd like to get to those, but I'm not sure it's going to happen. Either way, I am so excited to be participating in this. I hope to have some people check out some MM books and maybe to add those to their TBR. I'm going to really enjoy reading all of the things I have this month, or this week, and I will check back with what I thought about them towards the end of the week. And I might do some other things throughout this week if I have time to talk about diversity or MM romance, and I'm definitely going to add the books I talked about to the great list that's being put together right now, which I'll also link below. That's a spreadsheet for people to add books that they think are great diversity books. So I hope everyone has a really fun time reading this week, and I can't wait to hear what you all read and what you thought. So leave me some comments below. Let me know what you think. I will talk to you all soon. Bye!